Welcome back to the 25 Days of Flows, the Power Automate Advent Calendar. On day 23, look how close we are. This has been an amazing journey. Here we are on day 23, and here we're going to introduce not only a flow, but a concept. And those of you that have not taken the time to consider this concept, I'm going to invite you to do that today. So the flow we're going to do is we're going to query for account maps and then post that map on Teams. And our goal here is to get that there for frontline workers. So frontline workers means anybody that's basically at a point of sale or they're out in the field. They are in maybe direct communication with your customer and they're not sitting in an office at a desk, right? They're at the front line of your operations. They're dealing directly with your bottom line, okay? So what is so cool about this is that Teams makes that frontline worker experience, or that first line worker, some people say, experience a lot easier, because the Microsoft Teams mobile app enables you to install that on your phone, be invited into a Teams even as a guest, right? And as that guest, access information from that team that's targeted to you. And again, for frontline workers, this is really important to be able to narrow information down to what they need at the moment. They don't have the bandwidth to be fiddling through a whole bunch of logins and let me go look at this data or this one and let me imagine how that belongs together. Frontline workers need things targeted to what they have to get done. And Teams does a great job of consolidating information based on a channel scope, right? And so you invite people into the Teams channel that need that channel scope of information, and from there they get it. Okay, so you guys, you're used to me setting you up like this. I want you to think about this big. Think big, all right? But as we go into this one today, I'm going to be pointing out a few things, because here is why you need to pay attention to this flow. There's a lot of value add in this outside of this particular flow, because what we're saying here is that Power Automate can facilitate data entry and retrieval within a Teams channel. How do I get information? How do I enter information into your systems without having to be in your systems, without having to necessarily have access to your corporate systems? It's also a way to cut down on training requirements, all right? If I give everybody in my company a Dynamics account for sales so that they can get to account addresses, I just bloated my cost exponentially for a very little value add back, because they don't need all that information. They just need the account addresses, okay? Thirdly, I can reduce software as a service costs, because wherever possible, I can push information to Teams at a point in time so that it gets in Teams, and that point of time it's used for that particular purpose, and then that access is not impacted. So that person who received that information point in time did not need or will not need to have access to my software as a service that has everything that I have. It also reduces for me the worry about what they can and cannot see, because I'm specifically targeting information to them, and the only way they can get it is if they're in that Teams channel. So there's a lot of opportunity here from even an enterprise perspective to facilitate entry of data and retrieval of data, remove the need to learn so much software, because basically I don't need to know all of that just to get to an address, right? In this particular case, think about all the other things that might apply here. I don't need all that just to get to what the last invoice amount was. I don't need all that. You know what I mean? So it's like, do I need to learn Dynamics or SharePoint, or what do I need to learn to get to the information that I need? perhaps I don't need to learn as much as you might think. Perhaps somebody can push that targeted information to me and I never have to learn that bigger software thing. Okay? And finally, we don't need to license everybody and their mother every time we want them to have access to a subset of information. We can develop flows using Power Automate that push selective information out to them. Okay, so all of that said, stepping off my soapbox, we're going to go back to our flow. We want to look at Bing, and we want to look at Teams connectors. And these are standard connections. And as long as you have Office 365 or Dynamics in some sense, you have these. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Flow. Well, I'm going to start on Teams for a minute here. I start here in the apps because every Teams that exists, has a methodology for adding apps, right? And so we partner with many different companies in order to enable you to have a diverse stack of apps that you can use in collaboration with Teams. And it's amazing how much is available. You just have to, from Teams, you would hit the 3 dots under your objects, so your activities, your chats, your Teams, your calendar, calls. There's 3 dots, and then click More Apps, and you'll see there's an enormous amount of apps. The first thing you need to do to leverage Power Automate activities, our previous name was Flow, and so you will still see Flow in many places until it moves around and gets the new name. You need to install Flow first. So you would go to these apps, you would choose Flow, it'll even give you a little video, what's Flow, blah, 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 and then you install it. So I have the open because I already installed it, but you'll have an install option. You can install it for yourself or your team, and you can install it per team or just broadly, right? So I have a team site as well where I have sales and marketing. From this team site, I can add Flow here as well as a tab. So if I add Flow here, now I've just not only do I have Flow as an app in my Teams, but I have Flow available right here in my Teams channel in order to kind of use it, automate templates that apply to Teams. And we try to make sure that the experience in Teams is thinking about Teams so that you don't have as much other things to distract you as you work. All right. Now, what I've created is a sales and marketing Teams instance. And if you notice in here, I have a channel called Map Queries. And so what I'd like to do in this channel is enable people to query for a customer address. And so I've decided that the prefix for this is going to be tel : and then I will add to that the phone number. So, and this is because the phone numbers are unique. And anybody who is invited to this channel can type this into a message. Flow, which was created by somebody in the company, Flow is running against the credentials of that somebody in the company, and it's going to go connect to my dynamic sales instance or my CDS instance, and it's going to go and get the information about that account's address. Then it's going to take that address information or those coordinates, and it's going to pass it to a connector called Bing. And then once it gets connected to Bing, Bing is going to process that location information in order to return back a map. I'm actually taking an interim step of storing that map on SharePoint. And the reason I'm doing that is because the map itself would be hard for me to display right here in a message. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on SharePoint and use the thumbnail of the map in an adaptive card in order to display the map. And you can see that as soon as it puts the map down, it basically gives us, and I just zoomed in so you can see the map well, it basically gives, the bot returns back a map of the location with a little tag here for pointing out where the company is. You can decide in the flow what the zoom is. I think I'm zoomed out relatively much here, but let's change that as we look at the flow. And then the more info actually can be linked to the address of the website for that company. Okay, so now that you kind of have an idea of what this is doing, let's just zoom back out and let's look at our flow. Okay, so I'm going to edit the flow. You notice it has 3 actions at the top, and then it has approximately 5 or 6 at the bottom. Let's look at this. So first, when a channel message, let's start with this one. When a channel message is added, so I've locked this to sales and marketing and to map queries. I've also added a trigger condition here, and just to let you get a good close look at the trigger condition. The trigger condition in this case is saying that the message body, which in flow is body content, so the message body from the trigger, which the trigger is the post on the message, that message starts with TEL:. And it is important that you decide whether you have a space after TEL: or not, because you'll see that I'm going to use what they type in my query. So there's only 4 digits there, TEL:, and keep that in mind as we look at the next action, okay? So I didn't do anything else in there. That's all I did was added trigger conditions, which means it's going to skip any other messages that don't start with TEL. It's going to skip them. It's not going to pay attention to them. It's not going to create a flow run. It's basically going to skip it if it doesn't start with TEL:. Next, I do a list records, and this is going into my sales accounts or any other dynamics accounts that I might have. And I have to pick the environment. I have to pick the entity name. In this case, it's accounts. And I add a filter query. And this filter query is what's really important. It will ensure that this only returns 1 record as well. There's only going to be 1 record coming out of this because each account has a different phone number. So let me talk about that for a minute. If I go over to Power Apps and I go to Data, Entities, and then Account, and then I'm going to go over to the Data tab, you will see that I have sample data in here. So when I built my CDS database, I asked for sample data. You can add sample data after if you did not add it when you built. Just go to Power Apps Documentation and search for install sample data, and it will tell you what to do to get your sample data into your CDS database. And I'm just using sample data here, but here's the catch. The sample data addresses are not real. They're fake addresses. And fake addresses don't get maps in real life, right? So in order for me to get this where I could actually get a map from Bing, I had to change the address, street, city, state, and zip so that I got a real address. And what I did was I used Microsoft companies address. It's like, not Microsoft companies, Microsoft store addresses in different cities and states, because they're all public and nobody's worried about sharing them. And so you would put these addresses into your database so that CDS reflects real addresses. You can use your own if you want to, but just remember that you can't get a map from fake data. So 1 Harry Potter Lane probably won't give you a map, even if you precisely indicate that he's at Hogwarts. Okay, all of that is fantasy, and so it's very hard to get maps out of fantasy. So change these addresses, cities, states, and zip codes to real address, city, states, and zip codes, and this flow will work, okay, in your own tenant, right? You just have to make sure their sample data and the addresses are correct. All right, so then I checked to make sure, and the sample data was good in that you need to check and make sure that your phone numbers are all different. Otherwise, you'll get back 2 addresses, and that won't work well in this particular flow. So you need to have unique phone numbers. I use phone numbers, but you could use the account number as well. Probably in real life, I wouldn't use the phone number. I would use the account number. Um, let's see if we can see the account number. I'll just put all fields, and I thought there was an account number. Here it is. So this account number is probably what I would use in real life. But again, notice there's 3 of them that have no account number. So we'd want to change that right away. So what I do is I check that my form, like my default form, has everything I need to edit. So I'll go in here and I'll edit this form. I'll authenticate if it needs me to. I'm in a demo environment right now. And then I'll add the number that I need to, whatever I need to update. This way, if it's on the form, which I will save and publish. By the way, I love the new forms and views, the way you edit forms and views in CDS. It's like so much easier than anything I've ever seen. Especially if you're coming from Access to CDS, you will love forms and views in CDS. Compared to Access, this is like off the chain awesome. Right? Okay, so now I'm going to go to the ones that were missing. So I'm going to go to my data, show the all fields again, scroll over there to where I saw those blank addresses. I could also open this in Excel as well, but I know that my Excel is tied right now to, these are in alphabetical order, so it shouldn't be hard for me to find it. Count number. Okay. So when you select all fields, by the way, they put the columns in alphabetical order to make it easier for you to find, because now there's a ton of fields, right? But I can see that City Power and Light, Contoso Pharmaceutical, and A Datum, they all have blank account numbers. So I would need to make sure these account numbers are not only there, but that they're unique, right? And let's put in, I don't know how many digits there are actually. And refresh. So these look like model-driven apps, but they're just the forms. So just refresh. After every change, I'll refresh. So I could have used 2 more digits. So it looks like the account numbers are that amount of digits. So let me add 2 more. So this is what I call prep, and to be honest with you, I would never start a flow or an app until I know that I've got my back end in good shape, because you never build on top of poorly executed data sources, right? So always make sure that your data sources are stellar, or at least very good, before you start building apps and flows on top of it, because it's only going to mean that you're going to have to go back at some point. You're going to have to go back at some point and change them. Okay, so I'm just making sure I have, and when I'm editing in forms like this, like what you're seeing me do right here, I'm not in an app. I'm actually just using the forms to edit the data. I just have to refresh. I have to tab out of the field that I edited and then refresh. And then it's okay. I don't have to do anything else. And I'll refresh when I come back to Power Apps to make sure that they're there and that it's, unique. And so in real life, and the only reason I went through this exercise, because I'm not going to change the flow right now, is to show you how easy it is to kind of get your data in a good place. Now, I am clicking a couple of times before it actually lights up. That's just a little bit of latency. Just keep clicking. It'll light up. And I'm going to do XE. And I'm just making sure that everything I enter is different. Now, in real life, again, if I want to use the account number, I might want to do some automation around how the account numbers are set to make sure that they're all set properly and they're unique. All right, that's all part of building a solution. All right, so I'm going to close all this stuff that I opened, hit OK here, and refresh. So look at your data and make sure, I think I've said 2 things. If you decide to use the telephone number like I did, make sure they're all unique. If you want to do a better job than I did, use the account number, but make sure that the account numbers are all populated. There's no blanks. and make sure that they are all unique. Okay, this way you'll get back one data source, one response to this list query scenario. Now, I actually used the filter query, and you'll need this to get one answer back, because if you don't put a query in, you're going to get them all. You're going to get every single account back, and that's not what we want here. We want to get back just the one associated with the telephone number that they entered. So the field that is in the accounts database that I'm querying against is telephone 1. You do need to use the logical internal name. So if we go over here to main phone, I believe it says here in the main phone, this is not what it's called in the back end of the database. So if I search for main phone from the actually entity view, so I'm looking at the fields view of the entity, and I searched for main phone, and there it is. But the backend name or the logical name is telephone 1. So whenever you do OData queries with CDS, you need to use the logical internal name and not the display name. So you can go and look that up and find out what it is before you use it. If you want to look at the account number, again, I'm just searching from the fields view, and you'll notice that the backend name for account number is account number without a space and all lowercase. That's what you need to use in your OData filter. And then I use the operator equal. You have EQ for equal, you have GT for greater than, you have LT for less than, etc. Okay, and so you would use your right operator. I'll give you a link below to kind of looking at OData operators. And then finally, I have a formula here. Let's copy this out and put it in a comment so we can see it better. Basically, this is a substring function right here, and it's looking at the substring of the trigger body content. So again, are you getting used to trigger body content? What Teams is the message itself. Then it's starting at the 4th position and giving back 8 characters from there. And so this gets us the actual phone number. And then I think I just pulled out the message ID here. Let's zoom out again since we understand that story. And we're going to look at the if. So basically there's a condition here, because I want to make sure, what if they put in their mother's phone number? It's not in our database, right? It's not going to find it. So what I'm doing is checking the amount of rows that came back from list records. And I can use the length function to do this. This is almost a Friday Functions video, isn't it? The length function to do that. And I just have to plug in, next to length, I just have to plug in, and I'll just delete this, so do it again, kind of, the list records value. Okay? And when I do that, it's going to count how many rows are in there. So if it's less than 1, then it's going to set, that means they didn't find any records with that. So it's going to come back with a message that say the number provided was not found in the account entity. Please try again. All right, so that's an easy one, right? Then we have our no, and this is where we did find somebody. We found an account with that phone number. Here's where we're going to do the work, okay? So we're going to come in here, and we're going to put the value of the list items, list records right there. And now we connect to Bing. And when we connect to Bing, we want to pass into Bing the address 1, city, street address, city, state, zip, and country. So what we've actually done is we've used the action from Bing. Let's just show you how you get to Bing. Just type Bing when you're ready to add an action. And you'll notice that I'm using get location by address. Okay? That's what I'm using up there. And then we're going to use a static map. So we're going to use both of these, get location by address and get static map. Now these other two are also a heck of fun. You can get the route. You can actually route your drivers. This would be great for Uber. It just give them route options, right? So love the power of Bing Maps, and I'll give you a link to the API so that you can learn it. Because here's what we're doing: we're actually maximizing the fact that we can connect to all these awesome custom APIs. All right, so first I put the address information in from the results of the query to the account. Then I ask for the static map, and I give back the longitude and latitude. You will look at the appropriate situation. So when we were up here, just have to scroll over here, we were looking for the address information from list records. And that's what we plugged in here. Address 1, street address, and these are in alphabetical order. Address 1, street, address 1, city, state, zip, okay? You might want to, it might be a good idea, create a flow that just sends you an email with these different dynamic content tags, and then you can see what they all mean. Like, or you can create an app from data, something that I'll do a lot. Create an app from data, and then you can basically browse the schema of the CDS entity and kind of see what does it have, what do I need to populate it with, and stuff like that. I love using views to help me visualize as well, and they're probably the easiest thing to do. And I know I'm adding a lot to this because I'm dealing with CDS. I want to help you understand how you navigate that, those of you that haven't used it. I liked very much to go into the entity and set up myself a view. You could also, so I always target the default view, which is my active accounts here, if I make any changes. And so what you can do just to make, it really easy for you to focus on what the schema is make yourself a view with everything that really matters to you. So here I made a view with the main phone and the whole address. This way I could check and know that what I'm putting into my flow matches what I expect to get out of it. So I do suggest browsing your data. Basically, even if you don't have edit rights, you should have browse rights to look and see what's in your schema. All right, now when we got to get static map though, here we had to get the results of this get location by address action. It got the location by address and it gives back coordinates. And the coordinates are necessary for the map. So we just go ahead and I love it. I don't even have to know what the coordinate is. I don't even have to know what longitude and latitude mean. I can just go ahead and plug them in directly from my dynamic content. And then I can decide what imagery set I want. And this is a drop down. You can, so like if you're, for instance, if your company uses dark teams the most of the time, if everybody loves dark, you can change the canvas of the map to dark. And then the map will kind of meld into your dark background. It's kind of cool. And you also have aerial with labels. So you can decide like what your map will look like. You can even do a road map. And so I think this is really cool. So it was canvas light. Let's be brave and change it to road and try it. Now your zoom level, this is where I was talking about. You can decide what your zoom level is. I think it does have a max. And then here's your image format. Like what format will this map be in? And this is important to me because I'm going to store this on SharePoint. And then what my map size is going to be. I suggest starting with 750, 750 because it's actually bigger than what Teams will allow because of the width of the Teams card is locked by Teams code. So don't go too wide, otherwise it's not going to work anyway. All right, so then I go to create file and I pick where I'm going to put this. I'm just putting this in my SharePoint site in a shared document folder, which is the default documents folder when you make a site. And I am naming it the same thing every time. And basically what I did was I turned versioning on so I can see how many maps have been added. But the map is overriding the previous map because I don't really need it that much. I just want the thumbnail from it. But you can give it a different name and store all your maps on SharePoint as images as well. I also have the need to get the thumbnail, which I said is my target for SharePoint. So I get file properties, passing the item ID from the create file, and now I can get the thumbnail. And now I'm ready to post my card. And you'll get this flow, so you'll have the code that I used. I basically just did a simple adaptive card that just shows an image and a few facts about that about that image. And I chose specific facts, and you can download the flow and look at them. But I decided to put the account name. I decided to put whether or not they allow themselves to get emails, because customers can opt out of getting email. And so I want to make sure that the person on the road knows, don't email them if they said don't email me. Some people also say don't call me. So I let them know whether it's true or false they can call. This way they won't try any communications that the customer has already said don't try those communications. So I feel that's relevant. So when you're giving information to people in Teams, only give them what's relevant. But think about what's relevant. Don't just assume that what they've asked for is everything they need. Kind of be aware of what might impact them and add that extra value. Why not, right? And then you're adding the full address. And then finally, I add the link to the actual form. So this link, which you'll see when you download the flow, this link is actually going to open the form in Dynamics. So I'm just going to pull this out. And normally I probably would have put the website of the company on that more info, because that's the more info button. But I wanted to show you how to make a link to the forms. Basically, you take your Dynamics instance. This is always going to end with main.aspx. Put a question mark. Decide whether or not they're going to have a command bar and a navigation. And in this case, I turned navigation off. And then new window is true, so that it doesn't like open up anywhere but in a new window. It's an entity record window, and every entity record may have different query strings you can use. In this case, I'm using the entity name of account and the ID number that's coming from above, from that result we queried, right? Now, in hindsight, I really like this, but I think what I might do instead is put the website of the business, because if they don't have access to Dynamics and they're frontline workers, this will not work for them. Okay, that's a hindsight decision, but I did want to show you how to make a link to the form anyway. So I don't actually want to change it because I want you to download and see this, but just to show you what you would do is in your data, just move over here. In your data, if you go to the query results, I believe we have a website in here. I'm going all the way down to W. Yeah, website. So if this was truly for a frontline worker, I would not link them to the form inside Dynamics. That more info button would bring them to the company website, which they can access from wherever they are. Make sense? I knew it did, right? It's not too hard at all. So with that in mind, let's go back and do this again. I believe that it takes 2 minutes. So you can see have it happened here. And I think it took a long time because something happened with my internet connection at some point in this video. I'm just going to put another number. So 555-0150. So this was Adventure Works, and this was 555-0152. Let's go ahead and do another one, so we can see how long it takes. It isn't instant, and this has a lot to do with what's happening in the back end of Teams as far as how it's handling retries, what's available to happen, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have so much to do with flow, because if we go back to flow here, and we just go back to our flow listing here, see that it runs in under 5 seconds. That's a very short run, but it may take up to 2 minutes for actually to get into Teams. So while we're waiting on that, just want to give you a couple more heads up on this guy. If you're running through this condition, right? And so this is, imagine you're doing this from scratch, because you can download it and use this today. But if you're doing this from scratch and you click into the message ID fields, and you don't see a message ID, for some reason I have noticed that consistently occurring where I can't get the message ID. And you'll notice that's why I put it in the outputs because I can get it up here. So if I call for the message ID from the top of this flow closer to the message, then I do get the message ID. So I will put it in a compose sometimes so that the compose is going to be likely to arrive here. The other thing you could do, if you don't want to use the compose, is you could do what I taught you a couple of days ago. Hit the question mark on expressions and then go back, and now you'll see your dynamic content for message ID. All right. But it is really important in the case of this yes statement that you reply to the message that they posted so that it doesn't like come up 5 different messages later. All right, let them know that that number wasn't found. And so just remember, if you don't get the message ID, you're okay to use the question mark, and or you probably will get it earlier. And so this is what I did. I put it up here so that I could get that message ID later, because I don't know why, but with compose, it'll last my entire flow no matter what conditions I'm in. Whereas the message ID seems to fade out the further down the flow I'm getting. And so this is just a workaround that I have. And yes, we're working on improving that experience, all right? Remember that also anywhere else where you need the message ID, in this case, we're going to post the card separately. It's not going to be a response to the message. And that gives us the richness of the card. Okay, so those are a couple things I wanted to let you know. Remember to set this flow up. You're going to need to, and there it is. And if we look closely at this, we can tell how long it took. My internet didn't fall down this time. 12:31 to 12:33. It took 2 literal minutes. Okay, and then if we're in here, you can see that there's the zoom. You should, and this time did we change it to road? I think we did, because it looks different. Try the different types like aerial, canvas dark, canvas light. It's interesting. You can look at all the different types. I'm wishing you a very happy holidays, and I hope you enjoyed this video. There's a lot of conceptual conversation going on in this video where I want to help you understand that this is bigger than this flow. This is not just about you being able to give people maps of where accounts are. This is about you being able to give your frontline workers targeted information without them having to have direct access to your bigger data systems, all right? Power Automate can own that delivery so that you can control what they see, all right? Lots of great lessons in this example. I hope you pick up on it, and I hope you have a happy holiday. I'll be talking to you tomorrow at the next instance of the 25 Days of Flows, the Power Automate Advent Calendar.